Greetings, everyone. Today's message is about reaching the lost. The lost are people who hate Jesus. They don't know who Jesus is, and what they know of Jesus, they don't like. And the reason they don't like Jesus is because they observe the hypocrisy in the Christian world. They turn the TV on. They see the hypocrites, the Benny Hinns, the Kenneth Copelands, the greed-mongering people like Creflo Dollar, Joyce Meyer, and the list goes on and on. They observe the snake oil salesman. They see the greed and the blatant hypocrisy, and they want nothing to do with Jesus because of that. Well, I can assure you that Jesus wants nothing to do with that either, and he would be appalled if he walked in to the average church today where that was going on. And I want nothing to do with it. But I've written a little book here. This is, I believe, number 21, 22, 23 of the 24 books I've written. I don't remember what number, and it doesn't much matter. But as you can see, it's titled Finding the Real Jesus Amid Hypocrisy and Greed. And at the top of the book, it says, a witnessing tool. I realize that we need to reach the lost. And most of what happens down in the area I live in is we preach to the church. Everybody says they believe in Jesus. Now, I don't believe they do because I don't see that evidence in their lives. Many of them are cultural Christians. They are institutionalized Christians. They are generational Christians. Many of them said a sinner's prayer, and they think, well, because I've said that, I'm on my way to heaven, and now I just do whatever I please. Well, I've got news for you. That's not how it works. Those people I do not want to talk to. It's pointless. They already have heard the gospel, and they have internalized some version of it. Some of them are probably saved. A lot of them I don't think are. Finding the real Jesus is a response to a need that I observed. I talked to a lot of people, and many of them hate Jesus for the reasons I've already explained. And I've written this so that I can address those objections. So I start out by laying out all the objections that I've heard. I don't want to be a Christian because I don't like what Christianity stands for. I've seen the hypocrites on TV. I want nothing to do with that. I've heard that over and over. I agree with it. If that's Christianity, I want nothing to do with it either. And so I address that issue. I address the issue of all roads lead to God, and just choose a religion that you like and then go for it. Okay, fair enough. On a superficial level, that is true. All religions have a moral code. If you abide by the moral code, you'll probably be a better person. Christianity, following Jesus, finding the real Jesus, doesn't have a whole lot to do with that. And so I address that. I address the agnostics, the atheists, and the ambivalent. And this little book takes away all those arguments. It dispels the arguments. And I give this book away. I've given more books away than you can imagine. I am very far in the red, and I don't care. I will keep going until I can no longer afford to do this. And that's fine. The Lord will provide. However, if you buy this book and buy a whole bunch of them and you hand them out, you will get a blessing. Hand them out to people who hate Jesus. Don't give them to your friends and family who say they love Jesus. Whether they do or not is irrelevant. If they do, great. They don't need this book. But the lost, the Jesus haters, they need to know who the real Jesus is. And this book is one of a kind. There is no other on the market today that I know of that specifically addresses this problem. And that is the Great Commission, to go into the world and preach the gospel. Preach it to whom? Preach it to the lost. The lost are people who hate Jesus or don't know Jesus. Don't be preaching to the church. It's a waste of time. Here in my area, most churches get their members from other churches. They're basically brands, and one brand competes with another. That is not what Jesus talked about. That is not what the church is supposed to be based on. So if you're in a church that wants to reach the lost, I recommend you buy a bunch of these books. That will help me buy more of these so that I can give more books away. I don't do this for money. Trust me, there's no money in it. In the last 6 years, I've written most of my theology books. I've written many other books on other subjects, but theology books, probably about 17 of them are theology books. And I've written those in the last 6 or 7 years, and I challenge you to do the same thing and find out how much money it's going to cost you, how long it's going to take, and then start giving the books away. And you will find this is not a way to make money, okay? Now, I want to reach the lost. I want you to reach the lost, and you need this book or something like it. And I don't know anything on the market today that does this in a succinct and thorough way as Finding the Real Jesus. If you have a resource that does this and is as thorough, then by all means get that and give it away. It's about reaching the lost. We want to reach people who hate Jesus, and that's who I want to talk to. I want to dispel the misconceptions that have been perpetrated by the hypocrisy seen on television, the hypocrisy that's everywhere in Christianity. I've seen it. I've been a part of it. I've been in the institutional churches since I was 4 years old. So nobody's going to tell me I don't know what's going on in institutional Christianity. And I was a dyed-in-the-wool institutionalist for the longest time. Now, this little book will help us reach the lost. If you have a conviction to reach the lost, then get this book and help me do that. If you don't have a conviction, then by all means don't bother. Go ahead and do whatever you're doing, but this is how I reach the lost, and I know it will benefit you, and you will get a blessing if you reach the lost for Jesus Christ. So if you don't have a plan for that, this book could be your plan. Among my other books that I think you need to know about would be Antichrist, The Smoke of Rome. This is the best historical book on this subject. Why? Because I say so? No. Because very well-schooled scholars with degrees in history, degrees in theology, have read this book. And I've been told this is the best book on the subject. There is no other like it. We need to know what the historic church taught on this subject. And it's very clear. You need to, as a church, as a Christian, get away from these frivolous, time-wasting games such as pin the tail on Antichrist. Christians today squander their time on conspiracies, on pin the tail on Antichrist, on New World Order issues. And I'm not saying those things aren't valid, but they are time wasters. When you figure out that the New World Order is evil, it changes nothing in your life. Nothing. What you need is to understand pure doctrine, pure church doctrine from the historical church. And that has changed in the last 200 years radically. And the churches today know nothing about Antichrist. You can listen to all the best and top preachers in America, the John MacArthurs, the John Pipers, the Bill Hybels, and so on and so forth. The guys who make all the money, and they know nothing of this subject. They pretend to, but they don't know the first thing about it. And it's evident if you study it yourself. This book is a study guide. It will take you from the 1st century to the present. It'll take you through the Spanish Inquisitions. It'll take you up to the Nazi regime, through Croatia. It'll teach you what is happening in the papacy today. That is your Antichrist. It emerged from the Roman Empire. That is what prophecy predicted. That's what Paul said would happen. That's what John said would happen. And that is what is prophesied in the book of Daniel. We must know who Antichrist is. Antichrist has infiltrated all the churches today. It is done through the seminaries. Follow the money trail. I recently saw an article, John MacArthur promoting the NASB Bible. The NASB Bible comes right out of the Roman Catholic manuscripts. It is a corrupt Bible. But John MacArthur now is endorsing the changing of the word Lord to Yahweh. Why would he want to do that? Is not the word Lord sufficient even in that corrupt Bible? Well, it most certainly is. But the publisher most certainly wants to broaden its scope. and that would include attracting the Hebrew Roots movement. And they have to have the names the way they want them. And so John MacArthur, following the almighty buck, is jumping on the bandwagon. It's bad enough that he uses the NASB and endorses all the corrupt Bibles, but now he's joining the Hebrew Roots movement. It's all about money, folks. Follow the money trail. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Now let me show you another book. This book is my book, Authorized, the Real 1611 King James Bible. This Bible, the real one, the first printing, is almost impossible to find. It's the only Bible that doesn't have doctrinal corruptions. The only one. And I prove that in this book. And that includes the corrupt KJV used by KJV onlyists and dispensationalists. They use a Bible that was published and edited by a guy named Benjamin Blaney. It is not a translation. It is a revision. And that Bible has corruptions in it. I show them in this book. The churches have been leavened with false Bibles. The only Bible that does not have doctrinal corruptions is the one that came off the press in 1611. It is clean, and that is why the Jesuits tried to murder King James, did everything they could to stand in the way of the publication of the real 1611, and indeed subsequent editions after 1611 have corruptions. You must have the first printing to have the real thing. There are no corruptions, and I prove that in this book. The modern churches use the modern Bibles. They're hardly worth discussing. They're so corrupt. Yet I do touch on them. Now, one last thing. My latest book, number 24, Great Apostasy. This book traces the history of the apostasy of the modern church. It goes through the Bible translations. It goes through the emergent church movement. It goes through the history of the minor corruptions, the little changes in Bibles, and the way churches are today. Takes you right up to the Pentecostal charismatic movement, all of the things that are going on, and it shows where those things came from and why the church is a corporate model, an institutional business. It's based on Drucker's model, and I explain how that works. Great Apostasy, and it covers the history of the apostasy. We're in it right now, folks. So if you're interested in that, this is another book that will help you sort that out. And let me just conclude with this. I don't write books to make money. People have accused me of that. 24 books, 17 theology books in the last 6 or 7 years. It has cost me everything. My savings, my job, everything. And I've given more books away than you can shake a stick at. There is no profit in my bank account as a result of writing books and the few that I have sold. So don't accuse me of that, folks. Go do it yourself. Give up your job. Write 17, 20 books, 100 books in the next 6 or 7 years and start giving them away. You tell me whether it's a profitable enterprise. What is profitable in the Christian world is to play the game, to do what the major televangelists do, to buy into all the conspiracy junk, to teach the stuff that comes off the pulpits of America, to join in with the Bill Hybels, the Rick Warrens, the John Pipers, the John MacArthurs, and I can keep on listing names. Ravi Zacharias, all of that. Do that. That's how you'll make money. These guys are worth millions. They have the endorsement of the major publishers. John MacArthur, for example, he gets a paycheck from a papal knight. His name is Rupert Murdoch. And another guy, John Kohlenberger III, he writes prefaces to Bibles. He gets a paycheck from Rupert Murdoch, a papal knight. And I discuss that in one of my books. Rupert Murdoch received a papal knighthood, and it was reported in the LA Times, I believe 1982, and it states there clearly, you get a papal knighthood for service to Rome. It's in the article. I'm not going to dig around in my books and try and find it right now, but if it's something you're interested in, send me an email and I will send you the reference. Rupert Murdoch, John MacArthur, all the modern Bibles come out of Rupert Murdoch's publishing companies, give or take a few. They all come from the corrupt Bible manuscripts, and they're all connected to Rome. And John MacArthur gets a paycheck from Rupert Murdoch, and so does John Kohlenberger III. And the stuff that they endorse is highly questionable. So, for what it's worth, thank you for listening. I know this is a bit of a stern message, and it may seem a bit harsh, but the church needs to hear this. God bless. Thanks for listening.